University of Colorado students need all the help they can get finding suitable off-campus housing in Boulder. It's a whole different game compared to what we expected. And that's an anonymous parent's reflection on the housing situation in Boulder. And with that, welcome to the House Einstein podcast. This is House Einstein podcast 69. I am your host, Osman, with the House Einstein brokerage, and with me is Hamish Crab.
Hello, hello. Good to be here. Momentous day. We made it. Many more podcasts to come.
It's been another week, and we are trucking into the spring real estate market. It's coming on fast, and in the brokerage, we're getting clients ready to sell their homes. We're working with buyers to get them ready to see more inventory and potentially put in offers. It's even though it's only February, it feels like we're already in the spring market, and that includes dropping everything. We did not plan for a showing today and had to drop everything to go do a showing in Newlands because time is of the essence when it comes to real estate, and if you delay that showing, you may not even get it.
Yeah, that's a good spot for these buyers. I'm really excited for them. The seasonality of real estate's interesting. It's a slow build, but then it kind of almost springs on you as well. You know, you're preparing for it, you know it's coming, and then all of a sudden you're like, holy cow, it's all at once.
And the buildup in pressure is going to be something to behold when this market unlocks at some point when rates drop and the real estate market is no longer in this sort of skidding sideways mode. I think it's going to transition so quickly to a seller's market. It's already a seller's market. It's already a buyer's market above 3.
It's going to be ludicrous, though. Yeah.
But it will, because of that, the Augustus Gloop effect of buildup with household formation, job changes, and then the sudden influx of buyers who are seeing rates decline. It's going to be quite, when it happens, it may not happen in the next 3 to 6 months, but someday we will be in recession again as a country, and when that happens, likely
selling season.
That is truly the early phases when rates start to drop can be a pretty spectacular time to sell. All right, so let's jump into it.
Yeah.
Who are we? Yes. Thank you for joining us, listeners. And we are the House Einstein. This is the House Einstein podcast. Our mission is to help you make a smarter real estate decision at the brokerage. But in the podcast, we are only here to entertain you. Please do not make your real estate decisions, your investment or personal decisions based on what you listen to in this podcast. If you are a client or a prospective client, pick up the phone, call us. You can find our contact information on our website at houseeinstein.com. You can also learn a lot about what we do professionally for work. This podcast is part of that, but it is not a podcast that we sell any advertising into. If you want to learn about what we do at House Einstein for our clients, visit houseeinstein.com and then give us a call. We are more than happy to advise you on your unique real estate situation.
Absolutely. Osman, I think you introduced yourself, or if not, you're the founding and managing broker of the brokerage, going since 2013, right?
That's right. We are now we're no longer a startup. We are a little boutique, and I founded the company after having worked in both the investment world and the real estate world for a number of years. And this, I think, is my 21st year, which is shocking, but 21st year in the real estate world.
Yeah, dang.
And I still work with clients, but I do like doing content development, and I love doing this podcast. And we'll take on clients throughout the year, one-on-one, typically focused in Boulder County, Louisville, Lafayette, Longmont, and the city of Boulder, or unincorporated Boulder County, the mountain towns, and as well as a little bit into the resort markets, because our buyers and sellers here, our clients here, often ask me to help them in the mountains, in the resort markets of Colorado, and you know where those are. And Hamish, you've been with us for several years as our jack of all trades, videographer, expert, also licensed, and sees more transactions in any given year than most agents see in 3 or 4 years, given that you are supporting so many of us on the team. So thanks for joining, Hamish.
Oz, we're coming up on about 3 years and 19 days, in case you're curious. Yeah.
You're not expecting some sort of anniversary gift or something, are you?
No, we're a bit late for that. But just thought I'd let you know.
Do we need to acknowledge this in some way?
It's fine. It's okay.
We could take you out. We could do
manage.
a party. Oh,
we don't want to set the precedent. Anyhow.
I feel like 5-year marks are really meaningful. They deserve something special. But 3, I don't know. 3 just feels like an ordinary. But times have changed.
I'll come up with an idea.
Times have changed. Back when I got started in the work world, it was not uncommon for employees to have a decade or longer under their belt. And today, when I look at people's resumes,
people move.
They move in 2 years. I'm like, how did you That's just when you were becoming useful, is roughly at year 2, particularly for people that are starting their career path. Those first couple of years are often a steep learning curve, and then they become really productive and useful. So losing them at 2 years is painful if you hired right.
Yep.
Hopefully we keep you for a long time, Hamish.
I'm hoping to stick around as well.
All right. Well, that's not the topic of this week's podcast, is Hamish's continued employment. It is
attached dwellings. Yeah.
Well, not just attached. Well, not just attached. Well, hold on. No.
Go ahead.
It's not just attached dwellings. It is what you need to know if you're thinking about buying a condo for your CU students. So if you're a CU parent and you're looking at the insane cost to rent, or what you feel is an insane cost to rent here in the city of Boulder, and you're trying to decide whether to buy versus rent, well, this is the podcast for you. That is our core topic for today's closing table, which is our segment where we talk about core topics. And we're also going to talk about, in that core topic, we'll just kind of give you an overview. We're going to talk a little bit about market conditions, some of the financial considerations that you may have as a CU parent, what you should look for or possibly avoid in the market itself, and then some other factors that you may not have thought of as you try to navigate this market. And we'll wrap up that segment with a review of developments that you may be considering in your selection of a condo or apartment or townhome for your CU student. And then our next segment will be shameless self-promotion, where we talk a little bit about what our clients are up to and what they might be looking to buy or sell. We will be covering a number of sales of the week, possibly as many as 6. And these are sales that we feel are notable for a variety of reasons, based on their location or their price range. They might be an example of a property type that are worth tracking. We're also going to
pertaining to the core topic here today as well. I think we were pretty selective on that front too.
Actually, good point. Today's sales of the week do relate back to our core topic, CU's parent dilemma. And then a little bit of housing news, and then a couple of carve-outs. And we should have this wrapped up in, about hour and a half.
Perfect. I'm going to be a stickler for timing on this podcast, listeners. I've got to take off, actually, to cover a rental duty as well. So there's a licensing portion in the core topic. I think we should jump into it, but I'll elaborate there.
Oh, you want to talk about licensing, Hamish, since you just introduced that? It's halfway down our table of contents.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Is that what you want to talk about right away?
I think we'll let the listeners sweat and just really ruminate on what licensing is and means to them, and then I'll come in afterwards.
Okay. All right. We'll talk about the legal side and licensing. This podcast is sponsored by House Einstein. We serve buyers and sellers in Colorado, focusing on Boulder, Denver, and several mountain resort towns, including Breckenridge and Winter Park. Our mission is simple: help you make a smarter real estate decision. You can learn more at houseeinstein.com or our YouTube channel, where you'll find videos on neighborhoods, specific listings, and much, much more. Let's talk about the parent's dilemma. Mm-hmm. And the parent's dilemma overview is that after your child's first year at CU, you find out how expensive it is to rent. And typically, first-year students are required to live on campus, and after that, they are not required to live on campus, but most would like to be in walking or bicycling or strolling distance from campus, so that's not that far from campus. And when you find out how much it costs to rent a bedroom, which I recently heard is right around $2,000 a month for a bedroom, your brain kind of explodes. and you realize that's more than maybe your mortgage is because of when you bought the house and what housing prices were. If you are of the age of having a
college-aged
student, right? Like, so we don't have kids, Leah and I, but both of my siblings do, and two of my nieces and nephews are in college, and I've got many more that are headed that way, and the sticker shock is pretty astounding for a city like Boulder. It's not every city in the United States has high student housing costs, but Boulder has very high student housing costs. And if you are affluent enough, successful enough, or have other resources to potentially buy something, you start to look at that and wonder, okay, what do I need to know? And do the economics favor that versus renting? And maybe little Junior can learn about the rental market and the economics of managing their own property. Maybe there's an opportunity they can get their own roommates and they can be handling the rents and handling the maintenance and repairs, and we can usher them into adulthood. Or would you rather just have them stick it out and rent something from a landlord, pay the $2,000, $1,800 to $2,200 is probably about right. What I would expect most people close to campus are now paying for a bedroom, and that's perfectly fine. It's a tough one because Boulder housing prices are pretty high.
Yeah.
Right? Housing prices to acquire is high, and to analyze this market properly, you have to think about what CU is doing, in particular with development of the South Campus and potentially more student housing being developed at the Millennium, which is a historic hotel that was acquired by a housing developer. I don't know if CU acquired it or it was a developer, but it's going to be more student housing. And today's news, which we will talk about in detail, is that Naropa is selling their primary campus to a housing developer, a student housing developer. So when you think about that additional supply coming on market, will the student body, that the demand side, keep those prices at $2,000 a month, or are you going to find a sudden shocking collapse in apartment values and find yourself upside down in 3 or 4 years when your CU student graduates? If you're lucky enough to have multiple children that are probably going to end up at CU, then you have a longer investment horizon than 3 or 4 years.
Holding period, right? Yeah.
Right, your holding period is longer, so it's a little safer. So that's sort of the dilemma, and we have worked at the brokerage with many buyers and sellers that are thinking about acquiring or selling property that was aimed at a CU student. So we've dealt with all of these topics many times, and hopefully you find this podcast of value as we go deep into it. So let's jump into market conditions. And at the current time, it's very clear that conditions favor acquisition. Now, this is not for a normal income property investor who is much more tied to rates and looks at this cap rate as not really compelling. But if you're looking at it in comparison to paying a landlord $1,800 to $2,200 per month and not get any depreciation, suddenly the economics do favor your acquisition. And if you know enough about Boulder housing, you can see that in the long run, Boulder housing does not typically drop very much during the down periods. When it does drop, it's usually a buying opportunity. And we can go into the very specific numbers from last year. I could walk you through it really fast, just so you can hear it. Because at House, okay, let's do it. So at House Einstein, we don't just tell you how the market feels. We're not feeling you what we think is happening in the market. And we're not just talking about our own personal business. I really think it's important to talk about market conditions with the data. And once upon a time, go ahead.
Well, we were looking that up. Interestingly enough, we had a call with a client a little while ago, and they asked us, Osman, what does the market feel like to you? And I remember hearing the buzzword feel and being like, oh. And then, of course, he answered in data and everything. But it was funny hearing it from a client side instead of seeing, a reel of an agent going, well, here's what the market feels like or anything like that. But thought it.
Well, it's kind of tongue in cheek based on the old Stephen Colbert show where he used to talk. He was pretending to be conservative when he started that show, and he would talk about feeling the news rather than reading the news. So it's a tongue in cheek joke. That's where it comes from. And I just don't believe in feeling you the market. I really want to tell you what's going on from a data perspective. So we'll do it really quickly. And this is just for attached dwellings, just in the city of Boulder. Our data source is through our MLS, and it draws on data both from the MLS and a data feed to ReColorado and data from Zillow. So in theory, this is accurate data. I like to do my own analysis as well, but for fast analysis, I use the MLS itself. And in January, there were 75 new listings that hit the market. That is an increase year over year of 56% compared to last January. And when you look at homes for sale, this is the total available inventory. There were 171 homes for sale that were attached dwellings. Again, attached dwellings are condos and townhomes. 171, that's an increase year over year of 80%. And when you look at under contract, there was a slight bump, 8.8% increase year over year. So 37 units were under contract. Only 37 units, I should add. Closed sales. So keep in mind, closings are delayed 30 to 45 days from when they typically go under contract. Sometimes cash deals are faster, but it's a safe bet to say that closings in January were reflective of deals that were probably written up in December and maybe even November, but mostly December negotiations. And January is early data, right? But this is a continuation of a pattern from last year. So closed sales, only 32 closings, up 23.1%. So you see that inventory has dramatically risen year over year, both in total inventory as well as new inventory. And the number of closings and under contract, while have risen, are not nearly keeping up with the increase in inventory.
Not in lockstep at all. Yeah.
And then we'll just do price per total square feet, just so you know that number too. And we only we don't only, but we typically focus on median because when you have a small sample size, in particular, average can be easily skewed by outliers. And the median sale price last month was $450 a square, which is down 11.4%. And the peak, by the way, we just keep bouncing when you look at median. When you look at the chart, and you all can't see the chart, but when I look at the chart, the median per square has risen as high as 550. And it's hit almost 550. You know, it's almost like, what's that word in technical trading, Hamish, where you've got a threshold or a ceiling?
Or your support or your resistance.
Right. So it's 550 is a point where it's bounced off multiple times, and we're currently at 450. So this is...
It's where the bulls or the bears lie. Yeah.
This is pretty indicative of a market that is favorable for acquisition, provided you can ignore the cost of capital. If you are trying to move money, if you're trying to move money out of the stock market because you're like, holy cow, Warren Buffett's hoarding cash, maybe I should move money out too. Real estate historically is a classic inflation hedge. And little Johnny or Debbie or whatever his name you want to pick.
They're going to school whether or not you like it. You got to spend the money. You know, how are you choosing to spend it?
Would you rather enrich slumlords like me? Well, I'm not really a slumlord, but that's what people like to call landlords. And would you rather pay yourself? So the financial considerations are pretty clear that the market is favorable to acquisition for CU parents right now, and you have some of the best selection we've seen in many years, and that's a rarity. And it's probably going to be the case that the property will be worth more in 3 or 4 years or 7 or 9 years when you decide to sell it. Even though CU is adding lots of inventory. Well, it's not CU necessarily. It is CU with CU South, but it's not CU necessarily with the Naropa campus or with the Millennium.
I'd say like student-specific housing, right? Versus...
Right. Whoever's it doesn't matter who the developer is. It's just more supply. Although you can look, Hamish, while we're talking, or I'm yammering on. If you want to check who the developer is on the Millennium, that building's gone. It is gone.
Oh, on the Millennium. Yeah. I was watching it getting shut down. Bear with me on typing here.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Hamish. So, so that's the market conditions. Now let's talk about considerations for you. We already touched on rates. Yes, they're high. and we've talked about paying the slumlord or paying yourself. We haven't really touched on depreciation, and I'm not your tax advisor, so let me be clear about that. But in some circumstances, that depreciation on the acquisition could be beneficial to you for shielding some of your income from taxation. So you may want to talk about that with your tax advisor, and also some of the things you might need for maintaining that property could also be construed or allocated as business expenses. So that is something to ponder. And
not tax advisors, but we've heard of these things.
I've more than heard of these things. I do have a little financial model that I can walk you through if you're my client. It is based on like 25 different variables, and we can model scenarios, two scenarios side by side. But it's really important to consider that your student also won't be living under the landlord's decision to maintain. You yourself can make sure the property is safe and is in good condition, which really matters to parents. I feel like I'm from another generation where my parents were like, "Oh, your apartment looks like a prison cell. Great, that's where we wish we could have sent you." And instead, today kids are looking at some very luxurious housing options.
One of them we'll talk about the sales,
and one of them we're going to talk about in Sales of the Week. So that I think we've covered financial considerations pretty well.
One thing I think we were circling it for a sec there was there's going to be a lot of student housing development, but if you're looking at these attached dwellings, the audience, the buyer's market is larger than student housing. So, Osman's talking about appreciation in 7 to 9 years. It's nice because you, listener, if you're considering for your student here, are thinking about this. But then there's also people that are looking at condos for themselves, young professionals and smaller families that are looking at attached dwellings too. So it's a broader available market as well.
You bring up a great point, Hamish, that some of these developments that we'll talk about in a moment appeal to not just students. And one of your due diligence items should be to understand the tenant mix, the resident mix. It's not just tenants, 'cause some of them are owners. And if it appeals to students, if it appeals to young professionals or downsizing individuals, that may tell you that you have less risk of having a vacancy. And you also won't be competing with just CU-oriented units, especially the new build stuff that easily exceeds $2,000 per bedroom.
Yeah. Okay. Oz, you're good to push the ball. I wanted to get that piece in.
Great point, Hamish. I anytime jump in. Yeah. I'll try to create more pauses to give you.
No,
time
you're fine.
To
I'm
in.
learning to butt in. It's going great.
I came from a family of people that butted in.
Yeah.
So it's not a problem to butt in at all. And I'm trying not to talk as fast.
You're doing great.
I feel the time pressure that you've put under us.
I put a big one
for this podcast. So we're going to try to move fast.
Mm-hmm.
So the next topic area is what should parents look for and what should parents avoid? And we've got some insight on that. A couple of bullet points that we want to cover.
Yeah.
It used to be that Boulder would not allow more than 3 unrelated individuals to live together legally, and that is no longer the case. So you no longer have to stress about whether you can squeeze 4 or 5 people into a house, which is interesting. So that might increase some of the supply. And one thing we've learned over many years is that most students like to live together. So the economics of a 3-bedroom or even a 4-bedroom might be more favorable than buying a 1-bedroom. In fact, I own a 1-bedroom investment property. I probably wouldn't buy another 1-bedroom investment property because of its limited appeal to tenants. There's only it's like a very narrow segment of the market's totally down with 1-bedrooms. Now, some CU students, like my nephew actually, preferred to have his own bedroom and not have a roommate. And that can have an impact, and maybe that's a personal choice, but it's probably not the best investment choice. You're probably better off buying a 2-bedroom or more. And of course, we would help you irrespective, but we would tell you the same thing if you were our client, that focus on 2 or 3 bedrooms, maybe even a 4-bedroom or more. There are some 5-bedroom houses that are Martin Acre properties that are very close to CU that are in busy locations, but are complete cash cows, like the houses on Moorhead, or the ones that are right on the corner at Table Mesa, and along Lashley on Broadway. All basically the three corners of Martin Acres, three sides of Martin Acres have a lot of student density because those are homes that typically have 3 to 5 bedrooms, and kids don't care that they're living next to a highway. They should, but they don't, and so they rent really easily. In fact, I did an analysis for an investor who was thinking about selling his property on Moorhead, and there was no way we could tell him with a straight face that this makes any sense whatsoever. We walked him through the investment property model, and I'm like, this thing just it's a cash cow. This should be funding your retirement for the rest of, for your life and paying for your children's education because of how much cash it throws off, given how little your acquisition price was. So you should only buy those properties at a steep discount. But when you do, they rent they just throw cash like you wouldn't believe. Okay, so
quick too. I just looked up occupancy, and with the exception of some exceptions, it's around 5 per dwelling now.
Okay. I mean, 5 is probably the most you want to put into a house anyway. I don't know how they can limit it to 5, by the way, but that's a different topic. Enforcement and the rules are also something you want to talk about with your real estate professional that's guiding you, because some of the rules that exist are just completely ignored, and some of them are very harshly enforced, particularly short-term rental rules. The city has staffers that are looking for you.
Short-term especially,
Yeah.
And we are entertainment.
And this is entertainment. Thank you again. This is not
reiterate on this one. Yeah.
All right. Next item on the list for what parents should look for and avoid: proximity to CU. And the closer you are to the primary campus, the more sellable, likely the better appreciation, easier to rent, less headache you will probably have with this property over time. But if you are further from CU, like say Remington Post, your CU student's going to have a longer commute to campus, but you will be paying a lot less out of pocket. And ultimately, when you go to sell it, you're less likely to see any gain. And I've seen that many times. In fact, there was a member of my Rotary Club who asked me to do an analysis on a condo he bought at Remington Post. And when I did it, I was astounded. So I did a little analysis. I put Remington Post at the center, and I do like a quarter mile from that development. And then I did the same thing with CU and looked at it over a 20-year period. And it was like insanely. It couldn't be more it couldn't be more clear that Remington Post, you're cheap to buy into, but you probably aren't going to make any money. And your CU student's going to have a crappy commute. And if you bought close to campus, you're going to feel the pain of buying close to campus, but you're going to sell it quickly, make way more money, and your CU student's going to have a much shorter commute. So your choice. I'm a value investor.
Do you love your child or not? No.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Do you love your child? If you do, buy close to CU. No, I mean, it's really... Look, I'm a value investor. I love seeing a low purchase price, but it's cheap for a reason. And if you don't understand those reasons going in, you shouldn't buy. And this particular individual at my Rotary Club, despite being from Boulder, didn't understand that market factor and was angry that his condo...
It's a sneaky one, yeah.
He bought it actually at a peak point in the market, and the market had dipped sideways, and he was losing money on this thing, which is rare, but that's because he chose the wrong location. All right. What you want to talk about crime, Hamish? I feel like I've talked about it so many times. I feel like you should lead the crime topic.
I can, definitely. And I'll link to crime. Right before crime, proximity to CU, there is a unofficial college town called The Hill that's right next to main campus, and that's where all the Greek life lives. Understandably, a lot of the students want to live there. That's where the parties are, that's where the fun is, and there's actually some pretty good restaurants too. But keep that in mind, especially as you go, I guess, more west of Broadway in that general area. And then also we do this thing called the Red Solo Cup Chick as well. Oh, that was right after.
That was after crime. I was trying to highlight it for you.
Yeah, I know. I'm seeing it now.
We're going to talk about it right now. So we're going to talk about the party side versus the serious side of Boulder when it comes to the CU housing market. And there's the Greek life on the hillside, which is the west side of campus, is definitely more expensive and also where most of the kids would prefer to live because that's where the fun happens. At a grander scale, right?
Yeah.
That's the party side in my mind. And the east side in the neighborhoods for, say, in Baseline neighborhood or Martin Acres or Gold Run.
Some Fraser Meadows. Right?
Well, I don't know if there's a lot of
really
students over there, but there are quite a few options on the east side. Not as many as on the west side, but the east side of campus is far more serious, and that also lines up with where the engineering buildings are. So it's sort of funny. We have a client closing soon on a property at Wimbledon, which is just off of 30th, and those tenants are all serious science kids, near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
They're on top of their stuff. They're organized, and when I was in school studying biology and environmental science, the partiers, I mean, we partied too, but nowhere near as much as the biz school kids.
Oh, that's the running joke.
They didn't have labs. Like I had 2 4-hour labs every week, and they didn't have those. So they had a lot more time to go play. And that phenomena, I think, still exists today at universities like CU, and it's very split. The serious side of campus and the party side of campus. And it's likely your CU student does not want you to know about this distinction, because
sorry
CU students. But I would do, if I was 20 years old, I'd want to be on the hill too, because that's
just make a friend on the party side and then go over. But at least it's not your own space, you know.
Well, all your friends can be on the party side. Get yourself a townie bike and ride across campus. You'll be there in 15 minutes, and you never have
your stuff that's getting stolen or wrecked, or
or you could actually sleep at night because it's quiet at night versus the hill is not. There are many times during the year. In fact, I just saw we're seeing a property tomorrow on the hill with buyers that are not CU oriented. They have a little one, and I told them it's the question for you is how many times per year are you willing to be annoyed by your neighbors and what's going on in the neighborhood? Like, because you're 2 doors down from a giant fraternity, and it's not even that warm out, and they already have their beer pong on the front patio, and they're going to be playing loud music, and they're going to do that many times a year. How many times is too much? Because I would say at least 10 times a year you're going to be really annoyed, and at least 15 times you're going to be sort of annoyed but amused at the same time. And if those numbers are okay, then that's going to be fine. You'll be fine. But if you can't handle that, you should not buy anything close to CU. So similar issue, but for primary home buyers, is do you want to be close to Greek life? And what Hamish was talking about, the red Solo cup check, is if you're shopping, particularly on the hill, I always encourage people, and I'll do it for you, is walk into the alley and peek into your neighbor's recycling bins. And if they're full of red Solo cups and booze bottles, you know who your neighbors are. Yeah.
And petty, serious, or otherwise, that kind of ties into crime, right? Kids be kids. So you get a lot of drunk crimes too. But that's a really serious consideration. And something that we've directed our clients to is there's a map of kind of Boulder PD dispatch calls. And it's a plotter map. It's got little dots basically for everywhere that a call has come in and what the call's about, some pretty serious topics. I'm going to stick to petty crime, keep the mood high, but I'll link it in the description, and it's a really good resource to kind of see where these crimes congregate or where they're most concentrated, and that gives you a good idea.
That helps you understand the potential risk of crime for your CU student being impacted by crime. And the vast majority of that crime are things like stolen bicycles and minor property crime, like somebody
walking on your car because their date didn't go well, and their little Johnny's raging with testosterone and drunk, and thinks it's the height of hilarity to walk across your car parked on a public street. So that type of stuff might happen to you. And if I lived on the hill, I wouldn't have a nice car parked on the street. If I was anywhere near Greek life, if you're west of 9th Street, less of a concern, but still a possibility. But if you are east of 9th Street, watch out. And the crime maps that Hamish referenced, they do show incidents, and they show the type of crime. But one thing it seems like they don't show very well is crime over time. And so you kind of have to infer by clicking through various time periods. Like last time I saw the crime map, it didn't have show me 1 year's worth of crime and color code it.
Like, for whatever reason, they've decided not to do that. But there's enough info there that you can infer, and I'll save you some time. There's quite a bit of crime downtown. There's quite a bit of crime on the hill. And the corridors, bike paths, like along the Boulder Creek path, there's a significant risk of...
pedestrian paths? Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, the Boulder Creek path in particular, I would not ride at night alone. And I'm a 200-pound, 6'2" man who, generally isn't worried about these types of things. I would be hesitant to ride alone. And it wasn't that way late at night. I never had a problem. In fact, I used to live at Gold Run when I first moved to Boulder, and never had a problem riding a bicycle home, and never felt risky. But that is something to think about today. So, all right, so we've covered crime and the due diligence of looking into crime. Although the last piece I want to add is that some parents feel that main floor sliding glass doors are a no-no. And we've seen that. I personally have seen that. Typically, it's with a female CU student, and they're worried about their daughter and the risk of some deranged lunatic coming through the sliding glass door in the middle of the night. So I have yet to see a sliding glass door that's been bashed open by a deranged lunatic, but at the same time, I respect people and their concerns. So if you're thinking about buying, whether or not that's a concern of yours, it may have an impact on resaleability. So just consider the security of the property as part of your
same with
investment.
like garden level units, right, where they can enter through the windows or
exactly.
Like that.
But some of these things are relatively easily protected against. Like, you can install cameras, you can secure gates, you can raise the fence height, you can do things to make it less likely that the backyard or the front door gets beaten down. And again, these things are so rare that I get the desire to protect children, but I also sometimes that desire is a little bit overblown.
It's really tough to be advising on crime because it is so kind of almost at random. We can do best pointers and everything like that, but at the end of the day, it's who's to say?
Yeah. I mean, I think about it from a resale perspective and whether it will have a significant impact on resale. And then I also think about it from a parent's perspective. And that comes from a client of mine who was evaluating a property with environmental risk of it had high tension power lines that were less than 100 feet away. And I found the study actually that linked some sort of rare childhood cancer with those power lines less than 100 feet away, depending on, it was a British study in Lancet. And I shared that with her, and on the basis of that, we terminated the contract. And her words to me were very simple, that if her child were to develop first of all, every day she looks into the backyard with her kid playing in the backyard, she's going to see those power lines. And if her kid develops this rare form of cancer, she will never forgive herself for having made this decision. And that was all she needed to consider. So, it's not just numbers. It's not just dollars and cents. And when it comes to families and protecting our loved ones, we just want our clients to be fully aware of what...
Pretty much. Eyes wide open.
Eyes wide open. And again, the incidence probability is so low that it's almost laughable, except it happens. It's not never. And it does seem to happen more often on the Hill, and there have been incidents of actually serious assault and crime on the Hill. So Boulder is a generally safe place, but we want people to be fully informed and make smart decisions. That's what we're here for.
It's almost like our mission, Oz.
You'd think it was almost like we care about this.
We should make it ours.
A little bit. Yeah. Maybe we should make the whole brokerage about making smart decisions.
That's too extreme.
No, we should just sell everything. Okay, so let's talk about the next topic area. What else should parents look for and avoid, or at least understand? And that are the parking issues that occur in various developments. Some developments do not have parking that is adequate for the number of bedrooms, and increasingly they are allowing large-scale development and reducing the parking requirement. So it's unfortunate. It's still largely make-believe that people don't drive cars around the city, and
especially during a snowstorm or inclement weather.
People do ride bicycles and ride public transit, but it's probably a good idea to make sure that there's at least one parking space per bedroom for what you're buying. It's not the end of the world. In fact, our closing has one permitted space, but one actual assigned space, but then they give you permit passes, and there's plenty of permit passes in that complex, which actually I didn't fully understand until we met the tenants. And now I get it, because I thought, that's weird. How come there's not enough permitted parking? How come there's not enough assigned parking spaces? But this particular development has assigned, permitted, and guest. And that was confusing. So there you have it. Check on the parking and make sure it works for you and your family's needs and your likely roommate needs. And then let's talk about rental history. So it's sort of interesting in that some landlords want to pretend there isn't such a thing as a rental history and how hard it is to get from people. Some people are afraid to share it because they've not been declaring their taxes.
Oh,
and they don't want to create a paper trail over this. So one of the biggest challenges has been, well, what is this going to rent for? If it's tenant occupied, you now have an actual track record of what it rented for. But if it's not, the databases that are available to determine rent are very hit or miss, and there's a seasonal factor to it. So you can look at Zillow, you can kind of piece it together. Clearly, not everything rents at $1,800 to $2,200 a bedroom. I can tell you that much as a landlord. We actually keep our rental increases year over year relatively mild because I don't want to lose great tenants.
Retention is our priority. Yeah.
Yeah, I want them. Well, good tenants.
Exactly. Yeah, retention of good tenants.
Bad tenants, please leave as soon as possible. So delving into that rental history is something you want to look for, and if the rental history is legitimate or not, meaning that if it's based on short-term rental history, you may want to understand that the city cracks down on unpermitted.
Short-term is a big difference, yeah.
If short-term really matters to you, then you want to make sure you understand it, and that topic is too deep to go into on this pod. So we're gonna.
But a fun one to write down for another day.
It is a fun one. Well, it's fun. It's sad. It's aggravating.
Yeah, that's my fun.
It's full of smoke and mirrors. But
the dude bros telling you to get a million Airbnbs, you know.
Yeah. The dude realtors. Okay, let's move on for associations. So this is one of the most important areas of due diligence that you as a CU parent should be doing. And some associations will restrict your CU student from having a pet. They may also restrict occupancy, although whether that's legal or not is questionable. They can be your best friend or your worst nightmare, and you're joining a financial club for which you will have certain obligations. And if the financial club has been well managed, you'll be very happy. But if the financial club has been mismanaged, you will be very unhappy when you get hit with a special assessment. So there are lots and lots of ways to evaluate HOAs. Parents should look for one that has an adequate amount of reserves, is not subject to litigation, current litigation that is material, because sometimes there's non-material litigation happening, and that requires some investigation and some analysis. Your agent is probably useless for advising you on these things, so you may want to be prepared to at least do some basic financial analysis on those financial statements, read the minutes, talk to people in the community that have dealt with the HOA and decide whether they
Neighbors.
Is it neighbors? Is it an HOA of Karens that are going to bust you every time you leave your trash can out for 15 minutes after the trash truck is gone?
Because these are students. They might very well do that, you know.
God forbid they leave the trash bins out. So those are the types of things. Oh, and whether or not you can grill, right? So there's been a bunch of fires in Boulder at associations, at developments, often with students who left a barbecue grill going or something along those lines. And don't be surprised if the association has banned barbecue grills and banned the use of fireplaces like Gold Run. You can't use those fireplaces anymore. So those are the types of things that parents should understand with how the association is run, as well as the rules of the association.
And for that part of due diligence, that's typically during the under contract process, right? You get the HOA docs and those kinds of things.
Oh, you know the answer. You're asking this rhetorically?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, in Colorado, the standard contract to buy and sell has an entire section around due diligence, and it includes a deadline for the seller to provide the buyer with association docs, and then the buyer to either object or not. There's no resolution for association, but if you can't find the info you need or it looks shady, you should terminate the contract. But there's the due diligence around associations is not just limited to the docks. The contract pretends it's just about the docks. It's not. You should be talking to neighbors. You should be investigating.
Look at the grounds. Are they well maintained?
Use your own eyes. Exactly. If it looks like it's run down and the HOA is cheap, that's like a recipe for, the monthly fee is cheap. That's a recipe for a special assessment. So keep that in mind. Okay, so I think those are the key things that we would advise CU parents to look for. Are we missing anything, Hamish?
No, I think we nailed that pretty well.
All right, so we're going to move on to what I call other factors. And this is a conglomerate, a composite of things just to think about that aren't just... we could have probably merged this into CU parents look for or avoid, but let's talk about it. So roommates. Having been a landlord for many years, I can tell you that it is quite common for students who begin renting together to not end renting together. And the most common scenarios I've run across are that one of the students or more wants to do a semester abroad, and they want to swap in a new roommate, and they're shocked that there's a fee associated with that. And now you also have to get the sign-off of every person on the lease, including the co-signers. It hasn't been a problem, but I could easily see it turning into one when...
You make that up front as clear as possible.
Yeah. So really, this other factor is have a conversation with CU students ahead of time, even if they're the friend of your child, about what their plans are for study abroad and how you might handle it if one person decides they can't live with these other roommates anymore. They don't like this particular person.
Relationship issues, breakups.
They never do the
friends
dishes.
Dating friends' exes.
They're rude. Yeah, all those. Oh yeah, friends dating friends' exes. That's a reason for roommate termination. Except it's not in the lease as roommate termination. No. So y'all are going to have to figure this out. And as the landlord, now dealing with all of these students, you get to help usher them into adulthood, where they understand contracts are what you agreed to. And we will help you solve this problem, but there is a fee, and we may not be able to solve this problem. You may have to figure it out between you on how you're going to handle this. And so sometimes they want to do sublets, and there are rules around subletting that you need to understand. And then the last most common one, and this is a few bullets down, and I found this to be very, very common, is after living in the house for 2 years or so, they often want to get a cat or a dog. And cats can destroy the interior of a property and cost tens of thousands of dollars to try to get rid of the urine smell. And Hamish is looking at Mr. Balls right now, his cat at his house.
Mr. Havoc
and dogs typically destroy the outside, the landscaping, but they could also cause damage inside.
They can scratch a floor pretty well too, yeah.
They can really scratch up floors. So we advise our tenants, the student tenants, that if they decide they want a dog or a cat, the answer is already no. And if they get one, the answer is the dog or cat has to go. And I'm sorry, but that's the rule. Please don't make me be the bad guy. No and kidding. You already heard it. Don't ask after you already got the dog or cat, because it will have to go. And that sucks for everyone. So please don't do that to you or me. And this conversation, this sort of parent conversation, is always a funny one to have, but it's part of our routine of check-in for CU students with rentals.
Yeah. It's the eyes wide open what we do with clients, but with tenants. Also, I'm realizing we may have jumped the gun too. We're talking a lot of, and this is also a few bullets down, but we're talking about a lot of, I guess, property management things. There is also the option of people to get their own property, get a contract with a property management company.
Yep. In fact, I'm going to rename this section called Other Factors. You're right. This is all property management. And don't go into a purchase without thinking about property management. And property management is not just maintenance. It's dealing with tenants. It's dealing with leases. It's dealing with security deposits. And it may be dealing with property management companies. And you, as the owner, have a legal obligation to have a property manager that lives within or has an office within a certain distance of the city of Boulder. If your student, your family member, is on title, the rules are not the same. But even if they're not on title and it's a family member that lives there, the rules are not the same. And so understanding those nuances are important. And in the city of Boulder, you do have a legal requirement to pay a security deposit interest. and you do need to be using a lease that is compliant with the city laws. Luckily, the city has a Boulder model lease you can just pull down online, but that model lease is neutral. If not, it even favors the tenant a little bit.
Boulder typically does.
Yeah. There's an alternative to that, and actually multiple alternatives. And your real estate agent should be able to connect you with a couple of those options. But one of them is the Boulder Area Rental Housing Association, which we strongly advise you joining. And once you pay their fee and their annual dues, you get access to their leases, as well as access to all of their references,
sorts of resources.
all their contractors.
Yeah.
They are great. If you're going to be a property investor in Boulder, you should join BARHA, Boulder Area Rental Housing Association.
Hashtag not sponsored.
Not sponsored, but I am a member and have gained invaluable resources by being a member at BARHA. All right, so that's our property management segment that we just quickly renamed.
I think that's reasonable to... We're done here. Yeah,
that covers it. So let's hit our last part of this CU parent dilemma and actually touch on a handful of developments here in Boulder and kind of give you a hot take. I mean, I don't know if hot take is accurate. It's more of a short take because obviously after 21
we're not
years...
controversial here. Yeah.
Well, hot takes are really that you just heard this thing happen. Like we can do a hot take on Naropa selling to, the same developer that built Olive. That's a hot take because it just happened. But a short take is probably the better way to describe this. So we'll do a quick rundown of a number of potential a number of developments you as a CU parent might be considering, a number of locations and neighborhoods that you're thinking, would this be a good spot? And kind of give you our experience.
Our quick 2 cents. Yeah.
And I'm going to say this very carefully for the attorneys that are listening. These are my opinions and Hamish's opinions. And this podcast is humor. So please don't come sue me because I'm spilling the dirt or the rumor mill about your particular development. But over 21 years of working in this market, I can tell you that there are certain developments known for certain things. And you may want to be aware of those things before buying.
You definitely know a lot more than me. I know 4 of the things on here. So,
okay.
Yeah, I think we'll run through this. Yeah.
All right, let's start with the first one, and you can tell me what you know, because we have had listings on. We've helped clients buy and sell in this development during your time period. So let's start with Gold Run.
Yeah, Gold Run is to me personally
Where is it?
Based.
Where is it?
Oh, it's off 30th. No, 28th. No, like 29th in Colorado, right in there.
No? You're close. It's between 28th and 30th. It is just 30th, south of Arapahoe, just south of Scott Carpenter Park.
Yeah.
Right? So you can access it off the frontage road off of 28th, or you could shoot down or shoot up 30th and then hang a left into the development there. You could access it from either side.
Yeah, and Gold Run is really well located on a ton of pedestrian paths. It's also got underground parking for certain units and above ground parking, which is pretty decent. The short time that I was doing property management for this unit, we had prospective tenants that were like, oh yeah, I rented here 5 years ago and I haven't gotten over how good this development is. I'm not kidding. Like that's damn near verbatim what people have said to us. I'm not trying to hype it up too much, but it's like borderline legendary. There's so many people that know of Gold Run and really, really love Gold Run. There's a health club there that's got a great pool, hot tub. I think there's sauna and steam room there too. Like a gym. There's badminton outside, community gardens. There's basketball. It's a pretty, as far as like if you're shopping for your CU kid, like it's kind of got a lot of stuff there. It's not on the east side, right? It's west of even 28, or sorry, it's east of 28th. So it's not on the party side, but it's a pretty dang social area. And at least I'm 26 when I was managing that area. Lots of people around my age. So a decent little social spot as well, I reckon.
Yeah, great overview. Yeah. I'll add that it's really on one path, the Boulder Creek path, but you could easily shoot up 28th Street and access campus that way as well. And the Boulder Creek path goes right downtown, although I just caveated it with potential risk late at night. You want to get comfortable with that if that's something a young person is going to do on a regular basis. At least have a really good light on your bike and some can of pepper spray on your belt.
A whistle.
But I would go pepper spray and whistle, maybe both.
I agree.
But Gold Run is fantastic. It has a lot of health club like amenities, and it has a very appealing design. It's stick frame construction though, which means it has a higher risk of fire. And in fact, one of the buildings burned completely and had to be reconstructed. That's the building with sprinklers. I don't think the other buildings have sprinklers, but there's a variety of layouts, floor plans, and options. So if you're evaluating the comps, make sure you understand that, like, our last listing had the best layout of any listing I've ever had, or a client buy of it. In fact, I wanted to buy that one, but every time I want to buy one, there's one of our clients that wants it. And it's really, it has the elevator. It had the preferred floor plan, which is basically the size of a Martin Acres house, or even a little bigger than a Martin Acres house. Yeah. 2 balconies. So that unit was great, but one thing it did not have was it wasn't on the top floor. And the penthouse units trade differently than the second floor and third floor units. The first floor units don't sell very well, I think because of the garden level feeling and the potential safety concerns. And they also feel darker. So, and the upper of the penthouse units have this loft that often can be converted into additional living space. So Gold Run has those varieties in terms of floor plans. Some of them have kitchens that are very open. Some of them feel like you're in a little galley. It also has a variety of, it has a handful of townhomes. There are not a lot of them on Springdale Lane. So in addition to the condos, it has, 8 townhomes, 12 townhomes. Those are very appealing, and those price points crossed the $1 million mark during the peak. I don't know if they're still over that number, but those are really cool. I have not lived in one personally, but I have helped clients look at them many times, and they sometimes sell very quickly. Oh, here's a funny story. Actually, it was told by another agent to me, and basically they bought a CU Kitty condo and bought one of those Springdale Lane townhomes. Yeah. And the kid lasted less than a year before dropping out, and so mom and dad sold the townhome, and they made like $120,000 after commissions because the market was rising so quickly. And they're like,
2022 had to be, right?
I think it was like 2020 or 2021, and they were like, it was pretty good. Like, he dropped out, but it was a great investment.
He dang near paid for classes,
right? I mean, more than what, he wasn't even there a year, and their parents made like $120,000 before commission. After commissions. Yeah, it was really lucrative for them. So
that's incredible.
Don't expect that kind of return. But at the same time, there's a reason Gold Run just makes so much sense. So it is a little run down compared to some of the newer options. So that's the one thing about Gold Run, is that not all the units are very updated. Our listing was quite updated, our most recent listing. But some of them are pretty...
The complex itself is pretty well maintained, though.
I would say it is well maintained. Yeah. I haven't looked at their financials recently, but they look pretty decent to me.
Yeah, no.
So, all right, let's move on. Uptown.
Yeah, I'll let you do these and a little bit quicker. Yep.
All right, we're going to move faster. So Uptown is generally not considered a good location for students. This is far north Boulder, and your access to campus would probably be on the Skip. And yes, the Skip runs every 15 minutes, but it would take you probably 25 minutes or so from riding the bus. The Skip bus is the Skip is the name of the bus. It may take you 25, 30 minutes to get to campus. And if they decide to ride a bicycle, the north-south connectivity between downtown and uptown is horrible. They're trying to fix it, but it's still pretty horrible. So as a consequence, you don't see a lot of students in uptown, but you do see you see some grad students, a lot of young professionals, a lot of people in their 30s and early 40s that live in that neighborhood. And there's some rentals up there that are owned by investment companies, as well as lots of individual units you might buy. One of the factors is the proximity to the homeless shelter, and our office is up there. We've never had a serious situation occur because of someone who's experiencing homelessness, who may also have mental illness or something along those lines. The new library is really a nice asset up there, but this isn't a great location for students. I would not recommend it, actually, unless your CU student really likes bicycling and is totally happy to do the zigzag route to get there, going via Newlands, and doesn't mind a 25-minute bus ride or something like that.
All the construction on Broadway, and
Well, the construction on Broadway eventually ends, but
fingers
there
crossed.
always seems to be new construction.
It's back, yeah.
All right, so that's uptown. Lots of townhomes, and they're nicer than what you'll see. They're newer, they're nicer, they're not as expensive as, say, the Peloton, but there's almost no amenities. Like, you get the snow shoveling. That's basically it.
Yeah.
Well, exterior maintenance.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still fighting. It's like been
we got the awning sorted.
Yeah. Well, all right. We'll keep. Did they fix it? I gotta go look.
Yeah, they did.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about the hill. Next location. We already touched base on that quite a bit, and this is the location that is up the hill from downtown. When you're driving south on downtown, you go up that hill on Broadway, and just to the right side, you see the little hill commercial area, and then behind that is typically what most people refer to as the hill. We talked a lot about student density and property crime, so I feel like we've already touched on it. What's sort of sad is how beautiful some of those old historic homes are, and many of them have been converted into being housing for students and are grandfathered in for higher occupancy. So they're super interesting, but when you buy a historic property, you also are buying much higher maintenance costs, so just keep that in mind. But I see probably 3 or 4 every year that are very interesting investments. I think that the right buyer for that is like in the tier of affluence, probably much more affluent than your typical. It's sort of like the Hartling house that we saw that was bought by a CU student. Like that's somebody who has deeper pockets and doesn't mind making an investment that they think in the long run is actually going to do much better. And it's a more fun location or a more interesting property type, and they're not worried about partying screwing up their child's future because they were partiers, and look, they just did fine. So that's cool. That's the hill. Wimbledon. So Wimbledon, Hamish, do you know about this location?
I know the tennis, but I don't know this location.
Oh, we have one under contract at Wimbledon.
I know. I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't seen it? Okay. All right. So Wimbledon is kind of an interesting development. There's a number of townhomes, and I think mostly they're townhomes. I'm trying to think of ever seeing one that's just one story. So historically, I've seen results that they've got asbestos popcorn, and some of those units have had asbestos popcorn removed. They feel like they're from the 70s Soviet era of design. Like everything works, okay, like functionally, but it's not exactly the most aesthetically attractive development.
Yeah.
But the numbers work, but my previous clients that have acquired there have never had a problem finding student renters. So they have a common heat source, so they tend if you walk in the you walk in, it's like, wow, it's like 90 degrees in this unit. Why is it so warm? Because it can be, right?
It's for the people, yeah.
It's for the people, exactly. So Wimbledon, the one key distinction is whether it has an underground, a covered parking space or not, and that's the development that has the assigned parking space, the permitted parking space, and guest spaces. Great location. I mean, super walkable to campus, and not on the party side. Spanish Towers. So this is located at like roughly 27th Way and Broadway. I don't know if you've ever been in these buildings.
It rings familiar, but no.
They're pretty funky, and what I've heard on the street, is lots of maintenance issues, maintenance issues, and poorly managed association. And I learned that from somebody who may have been involved with the association directly, and I don't want to say much else because I don't want to create a problem for her or for me, but I would go in with both eyes.
You just gendered them too, man.
I would go with eyes super wide open. Like, the layouts are okay. It feels like you're visiting a hotel from the 70s, but it's so close to campus. But in this particular case, like, if I had a client looking at this, I would build a little extra time to review the association. So between association doc delivery and association doc objection, rather than our typical 2 or 3 days, I would make it 5 days. And I would be prepared to terminate if there's sketchy stuff showing up on the association, just based on the word on the street.
Keep a close eye. Yeah.
Yeah, keep a close eye. Okay, let's move on to Laguna. And Laguna is a development that is quite a distance from CU. It is probably, in terms of actual distance, it might be about half the distance to Uptown or 3/4 of the distance to Uptown. But the difference is that there's better connectivity, because along Baseline, the city of Boulder has built very easy to ride and wide and protected bike lanes. You should still warn your CU students that they have to look for cars turning, because cars turn and they aren't watching for students still. But that bike lane is super wide and protected, and it's a really easy and quick bike ride from Laguna over to campus. And this is, again, not on the party side. The development age is newer. Laguna has a lot more people that are not students in that development that are students. But there's another. So right next to Laguna is a building called Vistosos. Vistosos? I think that's right.
Vistoso, yep.
Yeah, Vistoso. So Vistoso I would not recommend, because those units are very difficult to sell. And I think it's an aesthetic problem. It feels like a motel or a hotel. And
it does.
It really is not an attractive design, and I've never had a client want to buy one ever. I've shown them so many times. And
so
when
if you're
the
looking for a bargain, yeah.
When there is a serious downturn, people get desperate and dump them. I would not buy in Vistosis because of I know how difficult it would be to sell that. And you may be okay finding tenants because, again, it's super easy to get to campus. But you also are probably going to be unhappy with its investment performance over time. And that's my personal observation and experience. So please, Vistosis board, don't come after me. But Laguna, on the other hand, I really like. It seems like it's very well built. And it has a heated indoor pool. And it's just a cool development. It's the designs are a little funky. And every time I go in there, it's just unique. And it has a mix of people living there, residents. I'm like, what's that word? Not tenants, because not all of them are tenants.
Demographic.
It's got a covered garage that's usually warm enough to melt the snow. It's got elevator access. And if you need to go get groceries, you've got Safeway right there. And there's a handful of restaurants in that plaza that are all okay. So you've got
Taco.
Our friend McDevitt's. You've also got the Boulder Library is tucked behind there, right next to Arleigh Burke Park. And so all of that's all super accessible. And you can cut through the neighborhood if you want to go a different route. Cut through Fraser Meadows and go along the frontage road to the highway if you want to take a different route into campus and not be on Baseline. So lots of options. I really like that spot. It isn't as in. So if I would rank Gold Run higher. Right, I would give it a little. I would give that like a 4.5 star, and I would give Laguna like a 3.5 star out of 5. We haven't ranked all of these. Are you going to make me rank them all? Okay.
No, we in the planning we specifically said we will not be ranking.
Okay, all right. Well, we started doing it. All right. So let's now talk about Baseline and Martin Acres, particularly the parts of those neighborhoods that are close to campus.
And these are single-family homes. Yeah.
These are single-family homes, not developments of attached dwellings. These are decreasingly student-oriented, but the closer you are to campus, the more likely you'll find a student rental tucked in there. And at their price point that starts at maybe $750, $725 for Baseline, $800 for Martin Acres, the numbers sort of make sense for it to be a student rental. And your young person will be living among people that are not students of all ages, but you'll be required to be doing the maintenance and repairs, just there won't be an association due. I like these neighborhoods, and they make a lot of sense because of their. You're basically buying dirt value plus maybe $150,000 for the house, and the potential to expand them, modify them, looks like it's going to increase with the new legislation that is coming down the line. So, Hamish, we got to go faster.
I know. I'm completely open to pausing and then doing a little record tomorrow if you'd like.
We never do that. All right, we're gonna hit on the last 3. Downtown Boulder, not great for students.
Really cool for a student to have.
We
actually did sell a property a while ago.
That's right. Our 15th Street condo, awesome property for students to live in, but it would take a more mature student, like somebody in their early 20s, more so grad students more likely. there is stuff between, let's say, downtown and 28th Street. In fact, we had a client acquire one of those this year, and that felt a little bit less pricey because downtown is expensive.
You're paying got a premium feel.
You're paying a premium to be in downtown, and that doesn't come with a proximity benefit to being close to CU. But that location, let's say along Arapahoe between like 19th Street and 28th Street, there are a few little developments in there where you can acquire a condo. They're kind of mini developments, like 4-offs or 8-offs. When you find one, 8-offs, not 8-offs, 4-offs. Okay.
Sure thing. Right. Whatever you say.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So those might be worth looking at, but not actually downtown. And then there's luxury stuff on the frontage road on 28th Street. So that's primarily Landmark Lofts. Landmark Lofts is probably 95% students and was not so long ago constructed. It's right down the street from Olive. And, I mean, I wouldn't buy it unless it was for a student. And you have some very luxurious options at the top floor. So we could talk about that when we talk about our sale of the week. And then our last one of development review. Hamish, we should have cut this to like 5.
Man,
Instead, we have like 12 of them. All right.
Instead, listener, you just get an excellent podcast.
Yeah, you're getting detail that you probably didn't want, but you're getting detail that if you're serious, you want to hear. So the Peloton was constructed, I think it sort of finished in 2005 or 6, the first phase, and then the second phase, I think they wrapped up in like 2013. They built like the core and shell, but they didn't complete it. But anyway, the way it was designed was intentionally to limit sound transfer between the units. Unlike most stick frame construction, it is a lot of concrete, and you're unlikely to hear your neighbors at all. And the quality of construction is generally pretty high, and the quality of the amenities is spectacular, but your association dues reflects that, and so does your purchase price. It's probably not the best choice for an undergrad. It might be a nice choice for a graduate student or a professional working at CU, but it's a more upscale experience, and it's more similar to Uptown Broadway, but much better built than Uptown.
Yeah.
All right. That was our massive overview on the CU Parents Dilemma. Let's jump in with a little bit of shameless self-promotion. And we've got a couple of things to toss your way, promote in our little shameless self-promotion segment. One is a new condo that we will have on the market in the next couple of months. And it's a very large attached dwelling with a 2-car garage west of Broadway. I'm not going to give them the street name, Hamish, so don't say it. But it is really close to Wonderland Lake, open space, and it is perfect for a couple who may be downsizing in the future or now and doesn't want to deal with a lot of exterior maintenance but wants a sizable house.
It is larger than my house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has a licensed and legal ADU. Well, I don't know if it's licensed, but it was legally built. So it's a great property, and it should be on the market maybe in March or April. We'll see.
That one's going to live very well. Just walking around, I did the staging consultation shoot for it yesterday, and would be a fantastic home to live in, really.
Yeah. It's a great location. I mean, it's especially if you want to lock and leave and not worry about anything for a while. It's cool. Yeah, and it's rare. You don't see properties like that very often.
First townhome I've seen like that. Yeah.
It's really unique in the product offerings that Boulder Real Estate offers or has available to you as a buyer. You won't see a lot like that particular property. So reach out to us if you're looking for a large townhome with a 2-car garage that's easily accessible to Wonderland Lake, west of Broadway, and we may be able to tell you about it if you are.
Perchance.
We may be able to tell you about it. Okay, so let's move on. Hamish just finished our fantastic neighborhood series video featuring agent Ian Steinmo, House Einstein agent, full agent.
Technically is a secret agent. Or no, a special agent.
Special agent. House Einstein special agent Ian Steinmo's neighborhood video on Devil's Thumb. We like to do these neighborhood videos because it will tell you things you may not know about these neighborhoods, and we like to educate our viewers as well as our listeners. So check out our new Devil's Thumb video. You will find it on YouTube, and I think Ian did a terrific job on it.
Yeah, killed it. They're great overviews. Introduction to the area. Yeah.
Yep. And all right, we're gonna hit these next two really fast.
Okay.
We have a lovely buyer family that are looking for something. Newlands would be a great spot for them, and they are probably between 1.3 and 1.5 or 6 is kind of their sweet spot. A nice livable house, at least 3 bedrooms, a garage. It doesn't have a ton of deferred maintenance, but it's okay if it needs updating.
We saw one where they were more willing to make an update than something that had been updated out of their taste.
Right.
So,
and that's the key distinction, is understanding that needs updating is very different than deferred maintenance. Mm-hmm. Like a dated kitchen is tolerable. A kitchen that's had a water leak for the last 20 years and no one fixed is not a kitchen that's dated.
Negative
it's
grading
a kitchen
for 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah. A foundation that's failing. That's not an update. It's a major fault. It's not even deferred maintenance. So they're definitely, I think, in the category of willing to take on updating, but I don't think they want to deal with property that needs, $200,000 worth of repairs to make it livable. So keep that in mind. That's what they're looking for. We love these people. They're lovely. They're smart. They're kind.
Super.
I get hugs at the end of our showings. I mean, that feels really good. They
offered us coffee today. Yeah,
that's true. They were really sweet. So they're nice people and really smart people. It's like that Venn diagram. Are you a really nice person? Are you a really smart person? Are you open to like a service provider that's really aimed at like this particular thing? Like our Venn diagram lines up so nicely together. So we really would love to help them find a forever home here in Boulder. And then last thing I want to talk about isn't really shameless self-promotion, Hamish. It's more of just, I'm cued in on this because, I want to talk about the Hearth and Stone Luxury Home Tour. And I was on the board of this group for about a year, and then I left the board because frankly I'm too busy, but I'm a big believer in what they're doing. And the reason I want to talk about that is because I saw another one of our compatriot agents talking about how broker opens are a waste of time. And they can't be more wrong if broker opens are done right. And the way this luxury home tour does broker opens is that it's not for one office, and it's not an invite of just your cool kids. It's a membership organization of luxury home agents that will come through and tour your home and give you actionable, critical feedback. And it's anonymized, so they feel free to really tell you what they think in terms of the pricing, the staging, the updates, how it fits in, how the market positioning fits in. It's invaluable feedback. And so that really is something you want your home on the Hearth and Stone home tour. It is only for brokers to go on this tour, and those brokers either can be guests, which they're allowed to attend a couple of times as guests, and after that they have to be members. It is really valuable feedback, and it's really valuable for the agents too, because they see real estate in a very organized way.
I was going to say, it's organized and intentional. Not
every house qualifies. It has to be a certain price point. It has to be a luxury home. These are agents that know luxury homes, and they want to stay on top of the market. They want the feedback for their own listings. They also like interacting with other agents that are in this segment, because when you interact, you do better deals. It's easier to do deals when you know the person. And so it just goes on and on. There's all these benefits for having your home on a luxury home tour, and they will also put it on their socials, which expands the awareness of this listing to the broader market. So there's not much downside when it's done right. And there are all sorts of ways to do it wrong, but the Hearth and Stone Luxury Home Tour is a way to do it right. And I want to make that clear, and I don't want to beat up agents that do it wrong. Okay? It's only in my office, and it's only my buddies. And I don't solicit for anonymous feedback. And I don't even allow you. You can't use these photos for social media. You're wasting money and time in that type of broker open. That's not what this is. Did you hear that sound, Hamish?
Yeah, I accidentally hit my coffee.
Okay.
It's got a good gong noise to it.
That is the shameless self-promotion. Although Hearth and Stone, I don't have any financial interest in. I'm a member now, but I guess I'll still call it shameless self-promotion because I was on the board.
Yeah. Yeah. You're promoting your approval of it? I don't know. Your involvement in it? Who knows?
I want to be a supporter of it. It's worth supporting. So let's go through sales of the week. We have time for sales of the week. And this segment is designed to illustrate certain price points and locations, notable sales that can help you benchmark and better understand the Boulder real estate market. Today we're going to be talking about 6 properties, and they are spread out throughout Boulder. Our coverage area, by the way, goes far beyond Boulder, but we often like to focus in on all of the unique characteristics of Boulder real estate. This first property is 2812 10th Street in Newlands, and it was marketed as a stunning new custom home, and it did disclose that they kept the foundation. No, they said the majority of the home is brand new, including the main foundation, with the remaining portion taken down to the studs. So this is a property that it should be considered a brand new home, but if you look at the old photos of it, there's a lot of existing elevation that was just, it's still there. So I really wonder about what portion of the home was new foundation or not, but that's how it was marketed. And we've sold homes like that as well. And we always disclose what is new and what is not new. They went with a year built 2024 in the MLS. According to the public records, we always look at that just out of curiosity to see how the tax assessor looks at this. And the tax assessor said the year built was 1950 with an effective year built of 1980. So it has gone through its second complete rebuild, and complete is in air quotes because, again, due diligence mandates that you go into depth to understand what was done, what wasn't done. And in this particular case, the property was acquired only in May of 2022. So it has been only over the past 2 years. All the work has been done. And it was also done by an LLC, not an individual. So typically when you see a fast turnaround for a home that has been dramatically refreshed or restored or newly built, I mean, these are marketing terms, but it's had a lot of work and it's being marketed by an LLC, it's probably a flip. I didn't see this one in person. I will add that piece. So I did not walk through, but when we do, we look really closely to see what quality finishes and fixtures have been installed in this property, because usually flips are done only for the profit motive, and they can hide a lot of shoddy work. Many flips after a few years start looking pretty bad, and this one, I can't tell you what it looks like, although certainly they did a lot of work to it. So almost 4,200 finished square feet, 5 bedrooms, 1 on the upper, which is probably the primary, and then 4 bedrooms on the main with a 3-car attached garage. The owner, again, acquired it for 1.5 in May of 2022, and it doesn't, let me just make sure there were no additional transfers, Hamish. Let me look at the tax record really quick.
Yeah.
Stewart LLC acquired it. When did they acquire it? Where'd the transaction info go? There it is. They acquired it in 22 for 1.515. And then they did a lot of work. We have the old listing to look at as well to try to get a sense of the amount of work that was done. So in the old listing from 2022, it was only 2638 square feet. So you're looking at a dramatic increase in square footage from 2,600 or so to almost 4,200. Yeah. So, and all of that second story didn't exist in 2022. So my guess is it took them that long to get this property ready and on market. I mean, it's possible they were almost ready in the fall, but listing in the fourth quarter is not necessarily a great recipe. I'll note they did actually. They did list it in the fall. Let me back up. So here's the listing history. It listed originally in July of 2024, so the end of the summer selling season, at 3.675. A couple months later, they dropped it to, well, no, this is confusing. So the original listing expired about a month after it was listed, and it was dually listed with different dates on two different MLSs. So here's the thing. Both of our local MLSs pull from each other, and it's unusual to see two separately created listings, and I'm not entirely clear why that happened, but the first listing expired August 29th, and that was just on Colorado, the Denver MLS, and then they put it on the market the same day on the Boulder MLS at 3.675. And that was for one day before they bumped the price to 3 point. Did I say 6.75? Sorry, let me back up. 3.675 was the original list price in July, and then they brought it. The original listing expired in the Denver MLS at the end of August, and then the same day they listed it on IRES, which is sort of the northern Colorado, northeastern Colorado MLS. It covers, kind of typically picks up around Broomfield is where you start seeing the volume of IRES listings dominate compared to Colorado. They listed it, and that is the Boulder. I think of that as the Boulder MLS, but it's also Fort Collins all the way up. 3.75. So they originally listed it on the 28th of August. A day later, they said, no. Actually, we think it's worth more money now, and they listed it at 3.75. And it stayed at 3.75 until it was withdrawn right before Thanksgiving last year, and expired a day after it was withdrawn. So nothing happened at the end of the fourth quarter. This is a strategy we actually recommend as well. It's not necessarily the best idea to have a listing in the fourth quarter, or at least start a new listing in the fourth quarter. Once you have the listing going, it's arguable whether there's an advantage to taking it off. And because everyone else is taking it off at that time of year, you may want to actually consider leaving it on. And in fact, we did that this year with two of our listings, decided not to remove it because everyone else was gone, which made us basically the only game in town.
Available, yeah.
All right, so they brought it back at the end of January. It's unclear what work was done between November and January, almost February. At 3.75, they relisted it at the same price, and it went under contract a few days later. And the spring market is very different. The first quarter is very different than the fourth quarter, and it sold at 3.6. So it sold for $75,000 below the list price in August, but $175,000 below the most recent list price. And the reason this is such an interesting sale is, one, it begs the question of depth of due diligence. And the amount of due diligence you should do for a home that has had this amount of work is extensive. And, it should be extensive. I don't know what work they did, but I'd want to see the building permits. I'd want to look at who the contractors were.
Drawings.
I'd be a little concerned the contractor's hiding under an LLC. If they're so proud of what they do, why are they under an LLC with a P.O. box? And I'd look really closely at the quality of the work done. And if it passes muster, great. There are really ethical and dedicated people doing flips. And this is not just a flip, it's a second story addition. But there are also people in the industry that are cutting corners to maximize every dollar they can. And those people... Considering
the short holding period on this one too, right?
You mean the amount of time between how long they owned it before they put it on the market?
And before they remodeled it too.
Well, they acquired it in May of 2022, Hamish. So they had it.
And then they remodeled it, last year? Or
they may have
and then listed? Yeah.
Well, don't forget, it takes time to get permits and line up your contractors. So, and we don't know if they were a team that were ready to go or if they needed to do all that work. But permits in Boulder are not instantaneously issued. So let's say 8 and 9 months to get your permits. And then they got it back on the market by July of 2024. So slower than a flip. And you can't, this is an addition, not just a a flip. Like maybe the main level was cosmetically remodeled, but that second story addition. Anyway, a little longer than what flippers would like to do. Flippers would like to do everything in 3 months, but flippers don't add a second story. So let's ballpark what they, back in the envelope, what did it cost them to add a second story and do all this work? I mean, maybe let's be generous and say it's $1.5 million, and say that they were inexperienced and they went with, the top line contractors and all the rest of that. Like they didn't cut corners at all, and they spent a lot of money. I mean, that's like gold-plated second story addition and complete refinishing at 1.5, and then they sold it at 3.6. So, that still gave them several $100,000 of profit. And I suspect the real number was probably closer to 800,000, maybe 900,000 if they're experienced contractors. So a lot of meat on the bone, even at that big discounted list price. And it's a little close to Broadway, right? This location in North Boulder in Newlands is not particularly spectacular. It is just east of the park and just north of the Alpine Balsam project, where there's going to be massive redevelopment. So I'd call this kind of within the Newlands box. This is maybe a C+ location, right? Like it's not amazing for a location. I wouldn't have bought this house.
I'd want to be a little closer to the foothills, right?
Yeah, or a little further from the giant Alpine Balsam project. So west of the park is certainly better than east of the park. You're less industrial in that zone as well. So, C+ location, and they still made a lot of money on this deal. And I think this is emblematic of what's possible in Newlands. Like you can buy these homes. There's another one on the market right now. I won't mention the address, particularly because there's a chance our clients are interested. And it's at 1.4. Our listing it's a little over 1.4. Our listing sold for just under 1.4 on a much bigger lot, right? And so if you bought that for 1.4 and put 900 into it, you're looking at like 800,000, 900,000 in profit. Like
seriously,
pretty impressive.
And I know we were talking about some of the density laws and everything that are changing, and the idea that you could potentially fit 3 lots on that one.
On that one, not this one.
Three homes. But,
yeah. Oh yeah, 3. It could be subdividable. Yeah, into like a building with 3 separate attached dwelling townhomes. Yeah. That is a possibility for the future of our old listing at 605 Alpine, but unclear that you could ever do that with this particular lot. So there's people are still mining for gold in Boulder. And this is
striking it,
and striking it, right? Like that's a pretty good deal. Oh boy, I just closed the window. Okay, let me open that window again.
The because they retained the front. If you go on Street View or look at the old listing or everything, they retained kind of the front first story of the building. It almost reminds me of those historical homes, kind of like on Mapleton or something, that are getting remodeled, but they just keep the facade and then build entirely behind it.
Yeah. 100%. That first floor is the original house. I don't even know if the windows were replaced. It's hard, without actually seeing it, it's hard to tell it. But it looks like they just gutted the entire main level, the 20,
it's
2,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And what they built is gorgeous, so I'm not trying to malign it. And I don't mind people making money, right? That's actually fine. The reason it's emblematic is if you're thinking about a home in Newlands and you're not finding what you want, you really should also be considering homes like our former listing at 605 Alpine, or some of the homes that have popped up in the last few months. There's one right now that I think is in a great location, and it has a giant lot. And in the future, could you do this, gut that house and start over and build something like this? You could, and this is super functional. 5 bedrooms, 5 baths, a 3-car attached garage, and 4,200 square feet. So,
yeah,
excellent deal
really
excellent play for the seller. I think it's a solid buy. I don't think the buyer overpaid. I think it's actually pretty rock solid. Except I wouldn't have wanted to be so close to Alpine Balsam, and I would have preferred to be in a quieter spot. But the design is pretty spectacular. I love the little courtyard.
Yeah.
I don't like fake staging. I'm not sure if that's what that is, but it kind of looks it. So anyway, there you go. So that is our first one at 2812 10th Street. Did I even mention the address? I think I did. 2812 10th Street. Okay, yeah. Sold for 3.6. No additional disclosed concessions, and just closed a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Sale number 2.
1986 Beacon Court. And it closed for $3.2 million on February 20th. The days to offer were 123, so you're looking at a list date originally of February 2024, so it had been on the market for more than a year. Their complete days on market's inaccurate. The actual complete days on market is 379, so more than a year, and it was under contract for 2 months, 122 days. Original list at 3.5, dropped it to 3.25, and closed it at 3.2. And the sellers acquired the home for $3 million in 2022. So they actually saw a $200,000 delta between what they bought it for and what they sold it for, which helps cover the real estate commissions, but really it's sort of a break even.
Yeah.
Not a ton of
this one I think you talked about on one of the blogs, one of the newsletters.
Well, just because when they listed it at 3.5 in the newsletter, and you can sign up for the newsletter at houseeinstein.com. It's the only place we discuss active listings. I thought they were reaching for the stars at 3.5, and
here we are.
They sold a year, and some days later sold for 3.2. But great house, right? The level of work that the owners had done to modernize this home. There's like a little collection of these little houses, this style of home on Beacon Court. They were all built in the 80s. There's nothing else like it in West Pearl. And Studio B and MK Construction are the ones that redid this home extensively in 2022, and it showed. It's cool.
Yeah, gorgeous.
But only 2,000 square feet, and
it looks larger. Yeah,
it looks huge in these photos, and this is the magic of real estate photography. This is probably a nice wide-angle lens, or it's some adjustments in Photoshop with fake glowy windows and a fake sunset, which I'm never a huge fan of, but it looks a lot bigger, but it's not that big. It's only 2,000-ish square feet, so 1,500 per square. But at least you got a garage space, and you are only a few steps away from all the restaurants and shops on Pearl Street.
Fantastic location.
Yeah. For a well-heeled buyer, coming from another affluent market, to buy right in downtown Boulder, turnkey, fully remodeled at 3.2. I mean, that checks the boxes as long as you close your eyes and don't look at the dollar per square. But dollar per square is also very adjustable by the average square footage of the property, right? So if you're doing a dollar per square analysis, make sure you look at other homes downtown of similar size, and then say, is this the accurate dollar per square? Don't be looking at things that are like 5,000 square feet and Mapleton Hill, non-historic, and then you have to adjust for the remodel and the charm of this property. Dollar per square is really just a sniff test, but it would have failed my sniff test at 3.2. But I do like this product. It's super high end and very lovely.
Yeah, considering what the market's done, it's nice to see a break even. Air quotes on that, but
yeah, I mean, look, they owned it vacant for a year, so they endured that pain. Yeah, I mean, if you choose intelligently in Boulder real estate, you are not likely to lose a lot of money. You can still lose significant money.
Entertainment podcast.
You're not likely to lose a ton of money, even in a relatively short period of time, even in a relatively mild downturn, which we've seen above 3. And homes that are charming and super attractive eventually will find a buyer. You may have to wait a while. Hey, fun fact, I know the former owner of this home, but I think before it was remodeled. I don't think she did the remodel. She was one of the founders of, there's a raw juice thing. What's it called? It's right on Pearl next to Trident. I'm not the right demographics. I've only been there twice. I can't remember the name of it right. It's like all whited out. It's really cool. I can't remember the name of it right now. It'll come to me in a second. But I know her. She was the owner who sold it to the people that did all the remodeling. So it didn't look like this when she owned it. Yeah.
Small world, though. I mean, small town.
Yeah. It is a small town. It's never a surprise when I recognize the owner's name in the tax records. I'm like, oh yeah, I know her.
Yeah.
Oh, what's the name of that juice bar? It literally is just a couple of storefronts down from the Trident on Pearl. All right, doesn't matter. Okay, let's move on.
Cool.
Any other comments before?
No, I think you hit them all on the head. Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Our third property is 2830 East College Avenue, Unit 402. It is located on the frontage road on 28th Street, across from the CU campus. You have to go under a little tunnel to get on the CU's campus. And this building was completed in 2008, so now it's like, 17 years old, something like that. It was listed originally at 1.125, and the seller let it sit there on the market. So listed in August at that price, and it went under contract in December, and it stayed under contract and sold. It closed February 10th at that price. So full price, very long contract period. And if you're going to do this, people, with a long closing date, you really want to bump the earnest money and try to make it non-refundable if you're on the sell side. If you're on the buy side, you act shocked. You're like, oh my God, we can't do that. But if you threw all your contingencies, there's really no reason left to hold back on doubling your earnest money or something like that. Not clear why they wanted the long close, but that's the story. So it's a 2-bedroom, only 2-bedroom, 3-bath, 1,753 square feet. It's one of these penthouse units. Mm-hmm. And these penthouse units are lovely, right? They have really cool views. And Landmark Lofts, when it was built, was on the luxury end of student housing. And I say it's student housing because that's who lives in Landmark Lofts. It's probably, if I had to guess, 90% or more of the people living there are students. And so this is this is our CU Kitty Condo podcast. So
that's where my mind's at.
This is for somebody who didn't have my parents as theirs growing up, because they would never have splurged for something on the luxury end. But if you're able to foot the bill for a junior to have a place like this, it's hard to argue with Landmark Lofts. They are modern into their design, sort of. I mean, they kind of have that industrial look with exposed ducting
and corrugated outside.
And they just feel really good. They have nice views. Finishes are still pretty good, and the bedrooms are huge, right? So even though this is only a 2-bedroom, the main bedroom measurements are 27 by 13. That's formerly called the primary bedroom, formerly called the master. Today we call them primary.
Yeah.
And the second bedroom is 17 by 15.
Big.
So either of these rooms could easily accommodate, bunk beds or twin beds for students, which is what I grew up with. Or you could let them have a very luxurious experience. So that's it in a nutshell on this. You're at $642 a square. You have 2 reserved car spaces, 3 baths. And I don't see these kind of loft ones sell that often. Maybe one every 3 or 4 years.
I know we talked about one probably last year now.
Really? Another loft?
Same type of area, very penthouse, yeah.
Okay.
Another really impressive one. I think I liked the last one a bit more than this. This one doesn't seem to have as much kind of going for it feels like.
I mean, it's okay.
Yeah, right. I know it's not
like it doesn't. For me at 50 years old, it doesn't really move the needle. But mostly because of the students.
Yeah, no kidding.
If I wanted to buy a 2-bedroom condo in Boulder that had similar finish quality, I would prefer the Peloton, because the construction is way better, and the people you'll be living with are way better, and the amenities are way better. I mean, the Peloton has some of the best amenities in Boulder, and you have Basta in the same, and a nice little lunch spot, all within. And actually, there's a new coffee shop I went to in that building, and even that coffee shop is amazing. So I wouldn't buy at Landmark Lofts unless it was for a student. And let's talk about the numbers really quick. So the seller acquired the property in 2021 for only $775. And the interesting thing is that transfer occurred with a warranty deed. So I'm not sure that's a market sale.
Warranty deeds are pretty common.
A special warranty deed usually is something from an estate. It's not. Oh, no, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Special warranty. Yeah. No, it's just special. It could be a market sale. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
You are right. I'm thinking about personal trustee.
Or a quick
Personal
claim
representative. Yeah. Hold on. No, there was no listing history in 2021. So we're
maybe
not sure
entered
what
for
that...
comp purposes. Yeah, who knows?
No, well, if it's entered, it would be on the MLS. So it
As
was
a listing
acquired...
period or just as a close?
Even as a close, if you list it... So participants in the MLS, like our brokerage, are required to put the sale in the MLS. And even if it occurred off market, we're supposed to put it in the MLS. And if we put it correctly in the MLS, it will show up in the MLS when we search for the property. And it's not showing up. It's showing up.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
No. It is. Actually, I apologize. It is showing up. 2000... Oh, it's really weird. It's showing up, entered into the MLS in September with an effect. Okay, this is really strange. So it was entered into the MLS on September 22nd with that sale from 2021. So September 22nd, 2024, the agent inputted that it was sold for $775 in March of 2021. So somebody backdated the MLS with this sale, and it probably was the agent that listed it. For whatever reason, and I'm not entirely sure, but I still don't think this is a market sale at only $775, and it wasn't on the MLS until 3 years later. And my warning to you when you're hearing this is that when you do these private market sales, there's a good chance somebody left some money on the table.
You definitely did at $775 in 2021.
Oh, if that's actually a market sale price?
That's insane.
That's insane, right? Yeah. Exactly. That's my point. When it's sold for 1.125 and the market's been down for the last 2.5 years, especially for condos, it begs a lot of questions on what happened here. In fact, all right, since we're doing it, let's just pull up the manual MLS
triggers
number.
The spidey senses.
I've got to go look. It may come up in IRES. I may have to go to the Denver MLS to get it. No, it came up in IRES, and yeah, there's no detail. The listing agents were from Fort Collins, and the buy side agent, they don't put the name in, says it was a non-Colorado agent. There's almost no info in this, and it claims it had been on the market 11 days. Oh, maybe, Hamish, the issue is that we're looking at IRES and not Colorado. So now let me pull up Colorado, because I feel like the issue is a data feed issue is why it's not coming up. So this will just take 2 seconds. And this is also why by the way, why you want an agent that if you really want an agent that has access to both MLSs, because there are times when both MLSs have value. And in this case, okay, it shows it is in Colorado, the original listing, and the original list date is 2021.
Eyes narrow.
So I think that they manually inputted it into IRES for whatever purposes, but there is a listing with a listing number, right? That is, let me look at another number that's right next to this number that is from that date. Nope, did not come up. How about, yeah. I mean, because today's numbers are way higher than that. So I think that it's just a data feed issue, why that old listing wasn't inputted, which, I mean, they made a killing on a luxury condo, and it sort of shocks me. That's my honest reaction. Is I just don't see the justification for that killing.
Yeah.
When the market's been slow and down, other than I think somebody just got a crazy deal, and they may have gotten it off market. It's not entirely clear, but that's what we got. All right, let me go. You ready to move on to the next one?
Yeah, just nice to see real twilight photos. Really, really pretty sunset photos on this one.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up now again. Yeah, you think that's a real sunset, huh?
Oh, totally.
I mean, at least the I'm not convinced. What makes you think it's a real sunset? Look how hard that edge is on the top of the...
Look at it. You can see all the clouds are the same. Every single light in the entire picture. No, they're not. They're a different orientation. All the lights in the pictures have the same glow. The lighting is much more consistent with the twilight photos we take. That's not a hard edge either. Like, compared to a sky replacement edge, nowhere near.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, look, there's consistent bumps in the clouds. Well, are there... Actually, I'm not sure there... Yeah, I guess... You know, look at photo 2 and 3, and look at the bumps in the clouds, Hamish. The clouds have moved dramatically east. Maybe it's the same. But the sky looks almost exactly the same, but the orientation of the building is so different between photo 2 and 3 that it makes me suspect about these sunsets. But hey, if they're getting that good that they're fooling...
No, shit, you're totally right, dude. The sky is replaced.
I think it's sky replacement.
You're totally right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sky replacement. Yeah.
Apologies, listeners, for the foul language. Dang.
And that's, Hamish, why they call me the boss.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's good enough to fool you, though,
okay,
right?
Yeah, shoot, that one's good.
That's a good fake sky replacement.
Yeah.
And I think what makes it good is that it's subtle compared to the mountains, and they just got lazy and didn't change the cloud pattern.
It's mirrored here, there. It's mirrored wherever backwards. You're facing the building. It's the same. Yeah,
it's the same. They just moved it around a little bit, adjusted it a little bit.
The last two photos you can see direct. Like, it's literally just mirrored. Oh, that makes me a second. Dang it! Yeah, I know.
But I like it's better lighting. It's better than most. Yeah, it's because it's because you're seeing what almost looks like alpenglow on the flat irons. So, you know, I mean, it's not bad. Who is this agent? Well, I'm not going to say their name on the podcast, but I'm just curious. Okay. I mean, it's a Denver Compass agent.
I'll say, too, right, they're looking west. There would be the sun or something somewhere. Like a massive blowout somewhere in this photo. Yeah.
Right.
Because at the time of day. Yeah. Anyhow, moving on.
Moving on, and a lot of unknowns. In particular, the acquisition price, not this time, but a few years ago, is highly suspect as being an arm's length transaction. All right, let's move on to our next property, 81 Benthaven Place. And this is interesting because we just did a video on the Table Mesa neighborhood, Ian Steinmo's video. You'll find it on YouTube. Go check it out. But this particular subdivision was excluded from that video. Hamish, maybe you can explain the thought process on that?
Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure. You know, it wasn't... Ian talked to the HOA managers of the Devil's Thumb neighborhood. And apparently these condominiums do not count for Devil's Thumb, even though the subdivision counts for Devil's Thumb. So they don't gain access to the same tennis courts or pool or anything.
And that's why he
like
chose
that.
To exclude it. Okay, that makes total sense.
The condos that are included are up along Bear Creek, and there's only like 3 of the complex too. It's a very kind of nuanced thing. But yeah, the subdivision on the legal description is Devil's Thumb.
Devil's Thumb. So the thing to keep in mind is that when you're buying up in Devil's Thumb, which is a fantastic neighborhood, there are not a lot of these townhomes, and not all of them have access to the amenities. And so you may want to examine what you're paying for in the HOA. This HOA is only $460 a month for a 4-bedroom, 3-bath. It's almost 1,900 square feet. It was listed at $975, and it sold for more than list. It sold for almost 20 over list, and as a cash deal, with a pretty quick closing, because time between under contract and closing was less than 3 weeks. So fast close, which is what you want to do with cash. And the notes say that it was an older seller, and it got done very quickly. The interior was
it double-ended?
No, it was not. The interior was decently updated. and looks like the rarity of these units. This is one of the things I like to do with my buyers is let's look at how many sold in the last 5 years that are like this. And my guess is if we did this analysis right now, which we're not going to do for sake of you podcast listeners, it would probably be only like 3 or 4 in the last 5 years, if that. And when you know that, sometimes you got to go in strong. And that's what happened here. Cash over list, closing fast. And overall, the property looked really nice inside. The previous owner did some nice, tasteful updates, probably within the last 15 years. And it's effectively turnkey for a generously sized property with 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and 1,800 square feet, only for $992. So that's a compelling deal, and a good data point for thinking about CU, which is what we were talking about earlier. This is not a location that has any students. It'd be surprising if there were any, because it's not a particularly easy location to get to campus from. But it's not horrible either. It's certainly more pleasant than Uptown Broadway. You just hop down onto Lehigh, hang a right on Table Mesa Drive, and then you're on bike paths all the way to campus. So not horrible, but
it's
still
just an
not
uphill ride back home.
Yeah, but that's good for your health and your heart. But if you're like a serious, if you're a serious CU student, and you want to live with friends and a grad student, and you have the access to resources that can pull down a $1 million townhome, this is a good one. Like this, like if you want your kids away from the party zone and living with adults and taking studies seriously, they can go party when they want to, but not at home. This is a really nice location, super low crime, just a little bit far from campus, but a better ride than Uptown Broadway because of that bike path that runs right along Broadway South, the south side of Broadway.
Yeah, really cool location. And if you want to know more, the video description for the video link for Devil's Thumb is in the description below.
Yeah, check out that video. I think it will surprise you, some of the pluses and minuses of the Devil's Thumb neighborhood. It's super well done. Hamish and Ian killed it. And if you're trying to understand Table Mesa, it's one to watch.
Definitely.
All right, now we are on to a 2-bedroom, 2-bath at the Peloton, 3301 Arapahoe Ave, unit 225, so it's sort of a mid-level unit. And when you're thinking about the Peloton, you want to think about where the parking garage is and where the door to the parking garage is, because that can get pretty loud. And you may also want to think about, if you are facing Arapahoe, you may get some views, but you could also suffer from constant traffic noise. So generally, I like the ones that are actually facing the interior courtyard, as well as the ones that have windows that face to the north, but you may get some bus garage and underground garage door parking noises happening. So take your pick, but check out both before you write your offer. Be sure you understand those nuances. So this particular unit, 1,600 square feet, 2-bed, 2-bath, sold for $920. And that was just a couple days ago. It was listed at $939.7. That's the last list price. Had been on the market about a month, and that was the only list price. They didn't drop it. They listed it January 13th, under contract about a week later, 8 days later, and sold for just about 20 under the list price, and sold with a conventional mortgage, not cash. And no disclosed concessions. So pretty sweet deal in terms of deal metrics. And you're looking at $589 a square with a $784 a month HOA, but you get those fantastic amenities. So how does this compare to our other unit that we just talked about at Landmark Lofts? 1.125, so dramatically less expensive, but the HOA is probably more expensive at the Peloton. The HOA at Landmark Lofts was $466, and the HOA at the Peloton was $784, but you're actually getting a lot of value for that $784. Maybe for the $300 delta, you're getting an amazing health club for you and the other resident or residents, family that are living in this. And you get 2 underground parking spaces, not 1, including a deeded storage locker. So, this looks like a pretty solid acquisition. I know the buy-side agent. She's super savvy. Always love doing deals with her. I think she also attracts clients from a demographic similar to us, investment-oriented, but not buying as an investment. They're buying it probably for their family needs. And again, I know that you and I or any light sleeper would be very comfortable sleeping at the Peloton based on all the feedback I've gotten from my clients that have bought there.
Newer construction, right? Yeah.
Well, it's not that new, but it's just built to be quiet.
Yeah.
And the clubhouse amenities are cool. I mean, just look at the photos starting at like the 32nd photo. When I had a listing, I actually got to use the hot tub up there, and it was awesome. With my client's permission, I said, "Hey, do you mind if I check out the amenities? You know, as part of getting to know the community." And my wife and I went up there and enjoyed a hot tub session.
I mean, great view for it. Yeah.
Oh, the views were great. They used to have more generous hours for the hot tubs, but then they found out people were partying a little much. So now the hours are pretty, like I think it ends at 8 o'clock or 9. But
people
that rooftop,
recreating using the amenities.
That rooftop is so nice, Hamish. The hot tub, the pools, heated pools and hot tub, and the barbecue grills, and it's elevator access. Then you have a floor that's entirely workout machines, and then you have a floor that's totally community living with that theater and community meeting room and lounge spaces, and it's all in its own separate building. It's just a cool thing. The Peloton. I'm a fan. It's someday maybe I'll downsize into one, and it's cheaper than Landmark Golf's by, $2 million or $200,000.
Yeah,
$2 million. I sound like certain political mistakes happening right now with numbers. Yeah. Okay.
Definitely.
So that's the Peloton, and again, very few students here. So if you want little Johnny to be away, little Junior to be away from the party zone, this is where they will have quiet places to study. This is where they won't have a lot of students. The amenities are worth the money you pay.
Or commute, but other than that, yeah.
And adults can live here too. Yeah, the commute is not good. So it's just busy. Arapahoe Avenue is super busy. So it's not a pleasant ride. I'd rather live in Devil's Thumb personally. If I had a bicycle to campus every day, I'd probably rather be in Devil's Thumb, but
being out east are just that tad bit more industrial,
Yeah,
like the more neighborhoody feel of the Devil's Thumb.
Basta. I have one word for you.
Sure.
Basta.
I've never gone to Basta.
Oh, really? Well, maybe for your 5th anniversary, we'll send you and a friend to Basta. All right.
Perfect.
Let's hit our last one.
Recording proof.
Oh, right. You're making a note of what promises were made. All right. Our last one is actually our listing, and it is 3707 Telluride Cir. This wraps up our review of attached dwellings relative to this podcast theme, which has all been about the CU parents' dilemma. And this is a development on Table Mesa called Shanahan Ridge. And it is a number of townhomes and a few single-family houses, varying sizes and layouts, for what I consider kind of the medium bowl of porridge size, 1,320 square feet. 3-bedroom, 2-bath townhome. 2 of those bedrooms are on the upper, 1 bedroom's on the main. Very functional floor plan, and 1-car detached garage, which is perfect for bicycles, camping gear, or maybe a small car. Very low crime and immediate access to spectacular open space. So this open space is far better than any of the others that we've talked about in this podcast. Any of the other, I would argue better than even Beacon Court downtown, because Beacon Court downtown, you have those trails are really, really popular, and there's also a transient community that utilizes those spaces or very close by, and you have none of that up in Shanahan Ridge. So if you moved to Boulder for the outdoors or wanted to downsize into a property in Boulder for the outdoors, maybe close to grandchildren, this one is spectacular. And I mentioned that because of the main floor bedroom. In case there's a mobility issue, this is way more adaptable for that. And it was an interesting listing in that we listed it at $850, and immediately our competition adjusted to $850, and they were exactly the same floor plan but in a better location with better views. Our unit had
mini
better
splits though. Yeah.
Did not have we had mini splits. They had better views. We had maybe a neighbor that hung out a little bit much on the patio, which could have affected our sale, but the issue was really not the list price or the marketing, because we did a great job with this property. We listed it in October. Hamish, your videography, not just once, but I think 3 different times, were spectacular. And we pushed that across socials, and we tracked the competition. Literally every week we got feedback from every showing that we could, not just automated, but in person, trying to figure out how's it going, what do you think? And basically what happened was exactly what we warned our client about, which was, are you sure you want to list it in October? Like, we will do the work, but you are in the wrong season to maximize sale price, and it's possible we're leaving money on the table. If we list in the spring, it could be stronger. It could also be weaker. The market could continue to soften, but there's very few buyers in the market in October, November, and December. And they felt like that was the right move, and we do what our clients want. So we did our work, and we got it listed. And we did drop the price once at the end of January to $839.
As part of a refresh. Yeah.
As part of a refresh, which I don't always recommend, but if you are going to pull it off the market and make some adjustments, including the price, maybe to the staging, maybe to the videography and photography, the media set that we're putting out, that's a good time to think about adjusting the price too and putting a new fresh listing on it. So we expired the old listing and we relisted it. Oh, actually, Hamish, we should, the old listing is still in withdrawn status, which is fine. It'll just automatically expire because it was withdrawn. So that's perfectly fine. Okay. So this was a really good buy for whoever acquired it. I think they got a very fair deal on a property that the previous owners had done some very nice updates and taken great care of. And it's just one of those things where shopping in the fourth quarter, early first quarter, you might find yourself a bargain. And that's what happened in this circumstance. And we went to the property multiple times because we had fall listing photos and then we switched to winter listing photos. And that's one of the big advantages of a team that does a lot of its own in-house content. Yeah. Like, we can go back and take these photos again. And getting this photo, by the way, the lead photo that's showing both the you can see the flat irons and you can see the full house, and the composition doesn't make it look like it's penned in. I'm pretty much over the neighbor's house through a tree with that drone to get that shot. Yeah, nice. That was a tricky, careful, slow flight to make sure I didn't hit the tree and end up with a drone crashing into their roof. So that's how that cookie crumbled. That just closed on Valentine's Day. All nice. Right, that's our notable sales for podcast 69.
Perfect. All right, news.
You're feeling a little tired, Hamish. The problem.
Oh man, we're going to be pushing 2.5 hours on this one.
You gave me a break we had to address things, and I had a break, so I'm recharged. I was going to try to get through these in 7 minutes, and it took 48 minutes.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about our one and only news piece, and that is Naropa has signed a contract to sell their main campus to the developer who built Olive, I don't know what you call it, but that higher end, over $2,000 a bedroom student housing development. And almost certainly that's what they're going to look to do with this as well. The price is undisclosed, what they will spend. Olive, by the way, is right where the former Liquor Mart was. And well, it's sign of the times, and it's a little sad, actually. I think the Naropa building of the main campus, what you see from Arapahoe, is just so pretty. And the daily camera photographer got a great sun flare of that building. Clearly historic, and unclear what the developer will be able to do, given that commercial buildings, I don't think, are subject to the same restrictions as non-commercial buildings when it comes to historic. But it's Boulder, so there will be people fighting it and protesting in front of city council for sure. And I think very likely the developer will just put in a lot of high-end student housing into this space. We could look at it from an angle of how many square feet is this lot, but I'm not sure it's particularly relevant, other than there's a lot of inventory. Here's the take-home point. There's a lot of inventory for student housing that's going to be built in the next 5 years, including the Millennium, including what's going in here, and likely I would expect South Boulder campus to be complete in 5 years too. And Boulder keeps growing, and the CU keeps growing and growing. It's almost unstoppable, and it doesn't seem to have any problem with filling these classrooms and attendance. We're not losing attendance. We are one of Colorado's premier universities, and we're in one of the best places in the country to live. So it's not a shocker that kids want to live here. Plus, marijuana is legal, and they're excited about that, right? So, I think I think that we're not going to see a big downturn in prices for C-use apartments and condos. I mean, we just saw that one sell for 1.12 or whatever, and for luxury living. And I think that's where the profitability is for developers like Olive, is they don't want to build cheap places. They want to build as many places that they could sell for $1 million plus as possible. And being this close to downtown will help them get there.
Yeah. What I'm hoping, and maybe unrealistic, is that they do something similar to that elementary school on Broadway that was converted into a co-housing community. Kind of same almost design as Naropa, so it could be really cool. But yeah, these guys, Core Spaces, seem to be doing a lot more modern, kitschy stuff. Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned that, because I know a lot about that Washington Street School co-housing. It's no longer co-housing. Washington Street development, including that old schoolhouse. In fact, before it was even open to the public, while it was under construction, I played a game of hide and go seek right around Halloween with some of the people that were involved in the development of that project.
Oh, cool.
More like the contractors, not Jim Leach, the owner of Wonderland Development. It wasn't him that was in the hide and go seek process, but we got to play hide and go seek, in a gutted out interior of that elementary school, which was really cool.
That's a blast. Yeah,
it was a lot of fun. And now they've got some really nice condos in there that still retain the charm and authenticity on the outside, but have a modern functional use on the inside. So I agree. I would love to see that happen. Mm-hmm. Good point, Hamish. It looks almost exactly like that building.
I know. It'd be cool, but yeah, we'll see what these guys do.
I correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that there are historic restrictions on.
Oh, I have no idea. I was going to ask you about that, and then you led with, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't think so. In fact, Historic Boulder is trying to preserve the South Boulder Rec Center because the city appears to have stopped maintaining it. And I don't want to dive in between the city and Historic Boulder on this one, but that's word on the street is that they're sort of abandoning the South Boulder Rec Center. We might have to have
Ian chime in because he recreates there pretty often.
Yeah, he does, and many of our clients do, and they're very angry at what the city's doing with that building. And I don't know if the city's just trying to get a new building, but they're moving funds to the East Boulder Rec Center. But one of the things that Historic Boulder is trying to do is claim historic on this commercial building to try to get the city to maintain it, which
personally that one's not pretty enough for it. Yeah.
I personally don't find it very pretty either, but I don't like that all of Table Mesa could lose their rec center if
especially like that Veely Lake Park and how perfect a rec center is there.
It's perfect. It's the perfect spot for a great rec center. Water slide into the pool, gym, classes. It's very loved by the community. And I think that it's a recipe for city council to lose their seats if they want to be on the other side of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that vote in Table Mesa.
Very strange. Yeah.
All right.
Dude. Yeah. Carveouts.
We have made it to the end of our podcast. We have our last segment called Carveouts. And because of the length of this podcast, we're going to probably go through it relatively quickly, Hamish. I don't know what your carve-out is, but
I don't know
I'll
what
do
yours
mine.
is. Yeah.
You don't? Oh.
No. No, I do.
You do, because I'm typing it in.
Yeah.
I recently discovered that there are adapters to mount vintage camera lenses on modern camera bodies. And if you haven't heard this before, Hamish and I spent a lot of time, and the company and individually, we've invested a lot of money in cameras, drones, gimbals, lenses, and of course our own skill set in telling stories about real estate and taking amazing photos and videography. It should be obvious. If you visit our YouTube channel, you will see the quality of the content we put out there. But I only recently discovered vintage lenses can work with modern cameras. And for many, many decades, I've had a Nikon F2 in my closet from my dad. And I don't quite remember him giving this to me. So Dad, if you're listening, you can have it back if you want it. I've been taking care of it since, 1997. I've been having possession of this camera. And the story goes, my dad bought it in New York City when he was doing his internship, his medical residency. And it was probably a huge purchase for him at that time because people doing residencies don't make any money. And so he bought it. I think he may have shipped it to a friend's house in New Jersey to save on New York City taxes because we were living in Queens at the time. I wasn't even born when I believe this camera was acquired. So I wasn't even alive. And so I found out you can mount the lens that came with this camera, which is an f1.2 lens, one of the fastest lenses available to consumers at the time, to our Canon bodies. We have a couple of Canon bodies we use at House Einstein with a really simple adapter. So I went down that rabbit hole, and it's so interesting. It itches like this same way like my old BMW Airhead itches like this like connection between the material world, like the physics of like an old motorcycle,
mechanical
the physics, the mechanical connection, with focusing it. It's so, I don't know. It's rich. It's nourishing.
Yeah.
It feels like you're making more effort to create art. And I've only taken a couple of photos because I haven't had time to go out with this thing yet. But I did take a photo of a random plant that's in my kitchen, in my dining area, in our sunroom.
Yeah.
And the way the bouquet behind it kind of is buttery. It's just so unique and interesting. So it was a fun camera to shoot a couple of photos with, and I'm looking for a fun lens, and I'm looking forward to playing with it a bit more with other scenarios. So photography has always been a passion of mine, and this has opened up a really interesting world of vintage lenses plus modern cameras that I'm going to probably continue to experiment with in my free time when I'm not, running around with a packed schedule every day like I normally am. And if you'd like to see that photo, you can go to my personal Instagram, Osman Parvez, at Osman Parvez, and you will see a photo of, I don't even know what kind of plant it is. It might be a cherry tomato or something, and it was flowering, so I'll have to ask my wife, what is this plant? But you'll see that as the lead photo, and then you'll also see a photo of the lens itself, and a photo of a couple of other pictures I took when I was in 4th or 5th grade. Probably 4th grade, based on the kids in that photo. With the same camera, with that Nikon F2 and that same lens on film that was sitting in a box, and I'm like, I know I took this photo, and I remember hauling this camera with me, and a teacher being like, what are you doing with that thing, and not saying anything to me about it, but I had no idea of its value at the time. Cool. And it's really cool that I don't know why my dad trusted me with this thing. I wouldn't have trusted me at age 10 or 11 with this crazy lens and camera setup, but there you have it. Yeah. That's the backstory of my Carveout on vintage lenses and modern cameras. And Hamish, it's all you.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to keep it pretty easy and light. A lot of my stuff is still a little bit further out as far as like personal projects. But the YouTube algorithm is feeding me overlanding content. I have a 1995 Nissan Pathfinder that I got for no money, and just recently came into some woodworking tools that I talked about on the other Carveout. So slowly but surely putting together some plans to just make like an easy raised platform, some drawers underneath for storage, cheapo mattress, and then I'll have kind of like a easy peasy bug out that I can improve over time. So just a fun little, weekend, one night camper type of deal. And pretty excited for that.
Are you doing some welding on this vehicle?
This one, no, that's all just like frame, like a wood, plywood raised bed platform in the back.
I thought you were welding the differential.
Oh yeah, I'll be welding the front diff at some point, but then I can run it in 2-wheel drive, and I'll have 4 low and 4 high. When I go 4 low or 4 high, I'll have 3-wheel drive locked because of the differential, and then I've got locking hubs as well. So it'll be like a proper crawler at some point too. They do have limited slip front and rear differentials, but they get tired. Especially, I think this is almost at 300,000 miles. So I've got the means, so I may end up just welding it. We'll see. I want to take it on a few trails first with the manual lockers. The auto hubs stopped working, the auto locking hubs. They did work at one point, and it was great in the snow, even with the terrible alignment and old suspension parts. That's all been fixed, but now the auto hubs don't work, so I got to check the manuals on at some point.
Where's your first destination for this rig?
No clue. I like Magnolia Drive. a lot. So maybe I'll just run out on Magnolia and see if I can find something. There was a camp like a campsite that I went to, like 2017, 2016. Gorgeous view, pretty accessible. Like I got there in my 7 Series. So, I mean, how bad can it be? But it'd be a fun one to shoot up and spend a night.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome. Look forward to seeing some great photos of your overlanding campouts.
Yeah, and overlanding. More air quotes for the pod.
if you need Starlink to stay in touch with work, let me know. We'll hook you up.
I might have to hit you up for that. But the dream is like go spend the night and then wake up, drive into the office and work from the office, or like hit home or something. So I'm like back before work starts. But
I like
never
it.
Sleeps.
It could be one of those inspiration photo shoots for Instagram where you're like inspiration overnight lifestyle. Camp out. Mm-hmm. Sell the lifestyle. That's right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, would you like to do the wrap up, Hamish?
Dear listener, I believe we may be competing for the longest podcast yet. So, very much appreciate you listening through. We had a great time. See you, parents that are considering. If you have any questions, reach out to us. The link for our website is in the description, and you can contact us. Click on the team tab, and you'll find Osman and I. We are everywhere on social media. We're on Instagram, House Einstein, X, House Einstein, Facebook, House Einstein, YouTube. You guessed it. So you can find us everywhere. The newsletter we alluded to at the very start, check that out. That's the only place we can talk about fresh listings. We go into a lot of depth there, and Osman is probably due for a in-depth market analysis as well. So you might see one of those coming up. Other than that, we will see you next week.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Bye-bye.